He remembered the scripture saying that an earthquake shook the mountain when Christ died. Could this crack point to the hole holding the cross? The cross hole extended 23 inches into solid bedrock, while the crack appeared to extend much deeper. It is not unlikely that they would have known where Christ was crucified, and he had many followers who would want to turn the site into a place of remembrance. The Golgotha the Catholic Church and Orthodox churches both use was first ordered to be built by Constantine the Great around the year 325 or 326 over the remains of an old pagan temple. This happened many years after Christ was crucified, but these remains that Ron discovered was Roman and could date back shortly after the crucifixion. After year 70 AD, the Jews were either killed or moved, and the city was reduced to a Roman camp. This could mean that the site was no longer used for crucifixions. Ron found coins in the building structure dating back to 135 AD and before, but none after. In 130 AD, the Christians was favored in place of the Jews, and this structure was therefore likely built by Christians at this time or earlier. This means that this was probably the first site that was recognized as the actual Golgotha. The Golgotha that the Byzantine Church was built over about 200 years later was constructed when knowledge about these places had been more or less lost. The closer the time were to the crucifixion, the more they would have known about the details of what happened. The fact that the coins Ron found in the ancient building were from 135 AD indicates that whoever built and used this ancient structure apparently abandoned it at the time and left the region. The fact that the foundations are still intact might indicate that it didn't suffer destruction at the hands of invaders, but most likely fell into disuse and decay. Eventually, over time, it was covered in dirt and debris. Whatever was the case, the evidence showed that the structure might have been constructed long before the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Ron and his two sons had worked here over a period of nearly 2 years. They continued looking down at the Roman level for a cave or an entrance to a tunnel, but without any luck. Ron then found himself impressed to break through a crack in the cliff wall. They all prayed and continued to feel impressed. They used hammers and chisels, and after a short time, they could see an open space behind. They enlarged the hole so they could get through. The cave on the inside was 15 feet high and wide. Ron had first gotten excited when discovering the cave, thinking the ark might be right there inside it. But it was empty and led to myriads of shafts and openings inside the mountain. Ron continued to search every cave and opening he could possibly find inside the colossal cave system. For 2 years they went back and forth between the States and Jerusalem to earn money at home so they could come back and continue the search. In December 1981, they continued their work inside the cave system, looking into any opening, crack, or cave they could find. However, all three of them ended up with a cold. Ron's two sons went back to the States, and Ron had to rely on help from others to continue. He wasn't going to give up and felt God had promised him that he would find the Ark on this specific trip. But now he had used all of his money, he was sick, and the work was very hard and exhausting. One of the locals that were helping him went through some of the smaller openings as he was thinner and could get into places Ron couldn't. While looking around, Ron found a chimney-like passage, and from there a small tunnel where Ron had to exhale in order to squeeze himself through. He then noticed a stalactite about 16 inches long in front of the cliff wall. Behind it was a hole, and Ron tried to look through it without any luck. So he enlarged it a little and could see a cave inside, but it didn't look too promising and appeared to be a cave full of rocks. But he was determined to look everywhere. He enlarged the hole enough for his helper to crawl in, but he came quickly out again with a terrified look on his face, crying, "What is in there? What is in there? I'm not going back in there." And then he tried to get out of the cave system as fast as he could. Now Ron realized that there might be something there and enlarged the hole enough for him to squeeze himself in. It was now January the 6th, 1982. There was about 18 inches of clearance between the rocks and the ceiling. Ron started shining his flashlight down through the rocks to see if there was anything underneath. He saw some dry, rotten timbers, and under it some dry, rotten animal skins that turned into powder when he touched it. He then saw something reflecting back, something shiny and golden. At first he thought it could be the Ark of the Covenant, but when removing the animal's skin, he saw a gold veneered table with a raised molding around the side, which consisted of an alternative pattern of a bell and a pomegranate. Ron felt sure this had to be from the first temple or the missing tabernacle furniture, and could be the original table of showbread. He then started to investigate the chamber more closely and looked around. He used his light and noticed a crack in the ceiling. Climbing closely to the rocks to the rear of the chamber, he saw a stone case right underneath the crack. It had a flat stone top which was cracked in two, and a smaller section moved to the side, creating an opening into the stone case. But the top was too close to the ceiling for him to be able to look inside it. He noticed a black substance in the crack above it, and some more of the black substance on the edge of the lid, leading into the box. The crack in the ceiling was directly above the cracked part of the lid, where it was open, and some of the black substance had to have fallen into the case. It was at this time, as Ron recalls, as the instant realization of what had happened here dawned on him, that he passed out. When he realized that the crack in the ceiling was the end of the crack extending from the crosshole found in the elevated platform many feet above him, and the black substance was blood that had fallen through the crack and into the stone case, he knew the ark was in the stone case.